Here we go. So welcome to this positive parenting online workshop. I've got quite a lot to cover, and there's going to obviously be time for you guys to also ask questions, particularly at the end. And as I said, this recording will be made available to you. And I know some of you might still be putting your kids to bed or having challenges with being online with us all the time, but do try and stay with us as we go through the workshop. I'm also going to be sharing a whole PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to put on the screen now. So you'll see this presentation shortly. Can everybody see this? Thumbs up if you can see the presentation. And we're going to go through this by way of trying to get the most out of tonight. And I know that all of you are parents of different children, different ages. So before we jump into you guys, just a little bit about me, for those who don't know me. I am a psychologist by profession, and I've always been totally and completely passionate about children and uplifting today's children. So I've written 2 books. The first one was called Great Kids, Strengthening Their Natural Potential. The second one is This Parent Magic. And I've also developed a children's board game. Some of you know it, called Inner Magic. And I just love to empower parents to feel better about their parenting and to have easy ways, frameworks and easy ways to uplift themselves and their kids. I love to create tools that are also great for kids to believe in themselves. And when I can help adults understand and manage kids, then I get the most out of my job and my workshops. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm going to ask you to just check in about yourselves. So what I'll do is I'll unmute you one by one, and just each of you, I'll say your name, and you can just tell me your name and your age of kids or anything that brings you here tonight. So we'll start with you, Melanie.
Hi. I am the mother of one lovely 3-year-old adopted baby girl.
Aha.
Thankfully, she's really well behaved, but there's nothing wrong with stepping up my parenting skills. So I'm very keen to see what happens. Thank you for having me.
Lovely. Now I'm going to you, Stacey.
Hi, I'm Stacey. I have 2 boys, aged 3 and 7, and they're a handful.
Lovely. And whereabouts do you live, Stacey?
I am in Cape Town.
Okay, fabulous.
South Africa.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us. We're going to Kelly now. Kelly? Oops.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I live in Knysna. I have a little boy who's 7 years old, and his dad travels a lot. And did you hear me?
Yes, his dad travels a lot. Okay. And?
Oh, is that all you heard?
That's all I heard. I don't know if the others heard the rest.
Okay, I just said that I have a lot of anxiety, which I think he inherited from me, and he's trying to work through that with you.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. We're going to you, Elimor.
Okay, hi, I'm Elimor. I'm sitting here as well as my husband, Chris. We have a 2-year-old or a 2.5-year-old little boy, and we just moved here, so everything is a bit exciting for him. So we are actually looking to get a better framework for him so he will get settled in nicely.
Love, oh goodness, something's happened with my muting. Sorry. We've got Yanti, who's coming up as Michelle. Can you hear us? Try again, Yanti. There's a sound issue. I don't know if the others can hear you, but I can't hear you. You were for a moment we could hear you. Okay. Thank you, Yanti. I couldn't hear you at all, but hopefully the others heard you. I'm going to go straight back into our presentation now, if that's okay. So let's start off, guys, with today's kids. Some of you may know that I speak about this. Today's kids, I see as iPods, a completely different system, whereas we are like old record players. So if you can relate to that, what I'm meaning is both play music, but the instruction system is very different. So if you think of today's children, I'd like you to think of your beautiful beings as upgrades of yourself for a moment. Okay? So that upgrade means that there are new instructions. If you get a new iPhone tomorrow, it's going to be different to the one of a few months back. And this is what is happening, I find a lot in today's parenting, is that we parenting by default. So we're using all sorts of methods that worked with us when we were younger, perhaps, but we forgetting that today's children are quite different. They are like iPads or iPods, and we're the old record player system. So let's check. Do you guys agree that today's children are quite different to how we were raised? I'm going to unmute you, and anybody who wants to comment, do you agree that today's children seem quite sensitive and different to how we were when we were young? Anybody?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, they've got very different challenges. They've got a lot more stimulants, both in diet and visually, in that they're dealing with that we didn't have to deal with.
Absolutely. So I also see that along with the challenges, how do you guys feel about the idea that they're an upgrade of you? Do you like that? Does it feel right for you? That they are kind of a better version of you and your hubby, or you and your partner?
Definitely.
Okay, so with this upgrade, if you keep that upgrade in mind, the entire evening this evening is going to be giving you a lot of information that is to support this upgrade. And it's not the only way. I mean, of course, there are many different styles of parenting. There are many different books and people with all sorts of ideas. But my whole philosophy is coming from a positive psychology approach. That means it's coming from bringing out the best in these little upgrades. They are unique and amazing upgrades of you. Okay? So with these differences, the sensitivity I find, the absolute knowingness and awareness that they have. Do you guys notice how astute they seem to be? Even a newborn, they seem very, very awake. And some of us could say on a level of consciousness, they are even upgrades of us. So I find it a huge privilege to work with these beautiful beings all the time. And you know, if we start to just take this concept of the iPod, that they are an upgrade of us, then immediately we see them as our teachers. And when we see the children as our teachers, everything changes. Okay. So I'm going to move on, unless there's a question at this point. Does it make sense to you guys? The upgrade concept, the concept that they are here to teach us stuff. And in that teaching, it's going to be challenging.
Very much so.
Okay, great. So what I want to look at next, oopsie, goodness, went straight to another slide, is what do you guys feel a child needs? Let's think about that for a moment. What is he, especially a young child?
Comfort.
Come again?
Comfort, love.
Comfort, yeah. Love. Anyone else? Stacey, what do you feel?
I feel young children need a stable environment with a lot of love and acceptance. yeah, they live in such a hard world as it is, and they need a safe place to come and offload. And
so that's stability, that's safety. Somebody else, Kelly or Yanti, what else, Elimore, what else do you think children need? A young child.
Yeah, I would like to say structure as well, because I know that is my flaw.
Structure, yes. So what I've done is, and of course tonight I'm trying to summarize almost an entire book into an hour and a half. But what I've done is I've tried to give you guys for tonight a very, very simple, I love acronyms, SLS, a very simple acronym. It's coming up on the next page here, that is going to help. Here it is. Safe, loved, and seen. Okay? So if you just think of the SLS, this actually relates to how my book is structured in 3 different sections. And the safe is exactly what you guys were already saying, that emotional security. Now, for young children, especially 0 to 2, safety is absolutely paramount. So many people, many theorists have been saying for many, many ages that if a child doesn't feel safe, then they can't develop well, they can't grow well, they need some sense of safety. So I'm going to quickly go into that. Do you want me to mute you guys for background noise, or is this okay at the moment? How's our sound quality?
good.
Okay, so I'll just carry on unless we hear lots of noises. So I'm going to look a little bit at what do I mean by children need to feel safe? What do I mean by loved? And what do I mean by seen? So the safety is about boundaries. And I think, Stacey, you said that stability they need. And then Elimore, you were also talking about structure. Mel, I don't know if you said anything. Mel, you're still with us, hey?
I'm right here, just packing for a flight tomorrow. Sorry.
No problem.
I'm leaving my house at 4 a.m. So I'm listening and I'm right here. I'm here.
Fantastic. Okay, so these boundaries are to help a young child especially. And the routine, I'm just going to mute us for a moment so that we can't hear backgrounds. Okay, accepting me. The routine is that they feel safer when there's an actual routine in place. And we've all seen this with kids at preschool, and even the sleep routine, and they know that breakfast is next and what's coming after. The routine is such an important thing to help a child feel emotionally safe. Now, one thing that I'm sure you guys already are aware of, but it can be frustrating, is that repetition helps a child feel safe. Children learn by repeating. So, for instance, when a routine is repeated, they always go to bed at this and this time. They always sit in this little spot for the supper or whatever. And particularly at preschool, there's a lot of very specific routines where the bell goes and then they have story time. That repetition gets neurologically wired into their brains. So the repetition is creating the learning. And even with kids right up until age 10 and over, you still do need to repeat. Repeating instructions. That's why kids also love the same old nursery rhymes and to hide in the same places, because that repetition gives them a sense of emotional safety. Okay? And then they also need to, in order to feel safe, we can help them a lot with the changes they're going through. Does anybody, let me get you unmuted for a mo, does anybody want to give me an example of a change that can be really hard for a young child? Elimore, I've unmuted you. Kelly, anybody?
Well, moving places, I can see that influenced Jonathan by a lot.
Absolutely. So a move is a good example, thanks, of a big change. starting of a new school, the birth of a sibling. So I know Yanti, you guys have just had a congratulations officially. You've just had another little one. So that's a big change for your 2-year-old to get to grips with. So we can help them feel more safe by managing these changes. A, by preparing them in advance. B, by making a little ceremony around this big change, and by constantly reassuring them. So for young children, I cannot stress enough how important the safety side is. And then a lovely top tip is to say what's going to happen in advance. Now, I know you probably guys are doing this already, but I just want to acknowledge you for doing it, and I want you to do it more and more and more. Keep saying what is going to happen. Even if you sound like a stuck record and you're getting tired of hearing your own voice, you will do, for instance. And you can say in the form of telling and then asking. So it becomes a two-way street for those those little ones who are already speaking. So you can say, remember, after breakfast, we're brushing our teeth, then we're getting in the car and we're going to school. And a few moments later, you can actually ask them, what's going to happen now? Remember, we've just finished breakfast, and you can get them into this two-way conversation where they actually now say, we're going to do our teeth, or we're getting in the car. So those things for safety are absolutely they seem simple, but they're very easy tips to bring in to help a child feel safe. I'm unmuting you all to check if there's any questions here. Stacey, Kelly, anybody? Mel, does this make sense to you guys?
It definitely makes sense. I would like to know, actually, because Jonathan isn't really talking yet, and I find it actually quite funny because this is very recognizable, because I do this actually even more with my dog than with Jonathan.
Yes, we do tend to do it
always
with
know what's going to happen. But with how would you then approach it with a child that isn't really speaking yet? Just like repeat yourself over and over.
Thank you for that question, Elimor. Yes, you will just do they are pre-verbal, or they are still absolutely absorbing and understanding everything. So please do go ahead and still tell them. Remember what's going to happen, and that is why research shows that you can even speak to your unborn baby in your stomach, because they are actually absorbing it all. You just won't be doing so much of the asking. Or when you ask, you will ask a more closed question like, are we going to go, do you remember, are we going to do our teeth now, or are we going to get the bags? And, are we going to do our teeth now? They can go yes or no, even if they are very nonverbal. So absolutely, you will just repeat, and you can use little questions that are just yes and no for that. But the safety, guys, is by please remembering those boundaries. By you putting those rules and boundaries in place and structure, you are actually, like with your own home, giving them that security that you've got walls, they've got this, they're going to test it, but that helps them feel emotionally safe. Okay. Now we're moving on quickly.
But mine just don't listen at all, though.
Absolutely, but that is where the not listening is a very common thing, and we're getting there at the end of tonight's talk. But I'll rush in with this one. When they're not listening, your boundaries sometimes have to be a little firmer, and you have to work with a choice and a consequence. But we're going to get there, Stacey. If I forget to mention it later, just bring it up again for me, okay?
I will.
Great. So now we're going into, I'm going to mute you guys for a moment again. We're going to go into the loved and seen. So, of course, loved is that heartfelt bond that we all have instantly and automatically and beautifully. And yet, loved psychologically involves also that respect, that they feel completely respected as a being, equal in value to you, and they feel valued. And to show them that you love them is not just obviously all the hugs and the I love yous, and definitely not giving into them. To show them that you really love them is to actually reassure them with words, to acknowledge them, and to give them choices. Children feel loved when they feel respected. Okay, and that is where the disciplining with heart, which Stacey, you have already preempted, is going to come in. So later on, I'm going to give you some top tips for disciplining with heart. Of course, there are lots of recipes and many, many other tips, but in an hour and a half, it's hard to sort of cover everything. But I'm hoping you're getting a sense that the loved is really about respecting and valuing and assuring them in words by treating them and holding them to quite a high standard with in terms of your boundaries. And they will respect you more when you are actually showing that respect in your words and in your way of disciplining. And then the final SLS, the final goodie in what they're needing, especially little ones, but all of us, we all need to be seen. So what that is relating to is the entire feelings realm. So for children, they live in a feelings world much more than in the head, and they need to know that you're actually, oopsie, not there yet, that you're actually acknowledging their feelings, right? And there's certain ways and recipes that you are actually letting their feelings be important, that they are heard emotionally, and that you're helping them to express themselves. In other words, they really feel seen when you're noticing their feelings. Yeah? Does that make sense, guys? Okay, and in Parent Magic, I divide my book into 3 sections. It's not called Safe, Loved, Seen. It's called Emotional Security, Respectfully Involved Parenting, and it's called Feelings. But I think the SLS is just a nice, easier way for us to remember. Safe, loved, and seen. Okay, so now we're going to delve into what do we sometimes do that is actually making things a lot harder for us as parents than easier. And for some of you, this is going to apply if you've got children that are a little bit older than 3, and for others, you've got littlies. It might not, they might not all apply, but let's have a look. So I'm just going to mute you guys again, and we're going now into some common mistakes that we often do without intending to do these, guys. So that's important. We don't intend to make these mistakes, but it's very easy to make them. So you might recognize a few. By threatening, because we're trying to discipline them, they're not listening, so we make a threat, but it's actually empty. In other words, we do not follow through with that threat. Now, if we go to our SLS, what do you think the child is learning if you are saying a threat, in terms of safety even? What do you think, and the loved, the respected area, if you put that into the SLS, if you say, if you do that one more time, you're not getting whatever, your iPad, but then you don't follow through, I'm going to unmute you because I want to hear, what do you think happens to that S, to that framework?
I don't know, I do this every day. I never used to.
Yeah, and that's why I
I must have done it 50 times today.
They're very common mistakes, Stacey, so please don't beat yourself up about it. But now that you understand the SLS, what do you think an empty threat is doing in terms of the SLS?
Well, you're losing structure. You're losing your structure because the structure that you gave them that they could work within now doesn't actually apply, because you said this is how it is, and then that dissolved. So how can anything else follow through from there?
Exactly. So it's just taking away all that amazing structure and safety you've put in place through all the routines, through all the other things. When you make empty threats, unfortunately, the child starts to believe that you don't mean what you say. And then they're going to really push on those buttons where they can niggle and get right into to your soft spot, your soft points. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Okay. The next common mistake is to give a lot of bribes and promises of reward. We all do this, and it's very easy to do. However, if we look at that framework, again, it's I'm seeing a lot of parents giving a bribe for behavior that's actually expected. They should be making up the bed or listening or eating when they need to eat, but now you start to bribe them well, if you do this, then you're going to get this or other reward, which is very similar to the threats one. So I'm not going to go into that more deeply. Insults and name calling, I mean, this often happens at school, but there are some cultures where even adults come up with all sorts of names for kids that end up being quite insulting for the child, and it goes against the child feeling respected. And then generalizing. Who wants to guess what the generalizing one is about? An example of generalizing. Anybody?
Good question.
Okay. Shall I just go ahead and let you hear? The generalizing is when you make it an always or a never. You never listen to me, or you always so slow, or you always leaving your shoes there. When we generalize for the iPods, remember guys, in our days, old record player style, we could handle that. But the iPods, the upgrades of you, they get very sensitive to these kinds of words. Okay? The word always and never, generalizations are generally going against that value and that respecting, because you're making it blanket statement because they're so sensitive. Okay? The other thing that we commonly do is we lose our cool completely. Now, of course, we're going to melt down, guys, and meltdowns in our own right are, of course, natural and allowed. What I'm saying is that if we're losing our cool a lot, what do you think that is teaching them?
That if they lose their cool, then that's acceptable behavior.
Exactly.
And if we can't keep our own status quo, then they don't see us balancing ourselves, so they don't know to do the same either.
Exactly. So I love it when parents just admit that they're having a meltdown and just apologize. Just go into that humble mode. Remember they're your teacher, and just say, you know what? I have completely gone over the top here. I am sorry for shouting. I'm still learning how to do this. And you go into your feelings. That if you lose your cool and you just explain it like that, that goes a way lot better or further than losing your cool and walking off in anger, and then you come back and like, okay, let's get on with it. Because then they're learning, as you said, they're learning, okay, fine, if I'm getting angry, this is how one deals with it. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
We're always going to lose our cool. We cannot be perfect. But just remember that you need to bring in some of your own humility and say, oh, my goodness, okay, you know what? Mommy or daddy just lost it. Just like you at school with your friends sometimes gets really, really angry. I've just lost it. I'm so sorry. And there's little tips. You can do a rewind game where you can reverse the whole story. Okay. Goodness.
I always do that, and my 7-year-olds learned that.
They learned the rewind.
And my 7-year-old says, Mommy, I'm sorry I got cross, but we all make mistakes sometimes.
Oh, brilliant.
Nice. You see, they are your teachers. They're going to call you up on your stuff all the time. So whatever techniques you're using, you can ask yourself, what is my teachable moment? What am I trying to teach you? And then they will call you on your stuff, as they're already doing. They will say, but Mom, you said that, or you don't want me to swear, but you're swearing, or whatever. They're very, very, very aware, these beautiful beings. So linked to losing your cool, you can imagine how when we change the rules, and one moment we say, yes, it is this time for bedtime, but then we change it. If we go back to our SLS, which of those do you think gets affected? The safety, the love, or the being seen when we change our rules?
Safety.
The safety is, again, is because they're not sure, are you really consistent? Okay. Then we're looking at getting into power struggles. This happens amazingly with today's kids, even 2-year-olds. It used to only be 4-year-olds, but now everything's shifting. So even little 2-year-olds love to get into power struggles with us. And of course, it's quite common that we feel overwhelmed. And then we go into, because I say so, and I'm the adult here, and that goes against the whole thing of them being our teachers. So power struggles, generally, we've rather got to get them on our side. We've got to empower them, but that's a whole other workshop. Overkill is pretty much when we changing the rules or saying the same kind of sentence or punishment or even positive thing over and over and over. I call it over-servicing sometimes as well. Do you know some parents that just, they are almost too attentive to every single motion and movement and a feeling of the child, to the point that they're not standing in their own space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the overkill can also be in terms of saying the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result. Comparing, making things personal. I'm just going to run through these quickly. Being a bad example, forgetting their uniqueness. These are all common mistakes. Being unaware for the reasons of their behavior. So there's an entire chapter in Parent Magic on understanding where behavior is coming from. I wasn't able to put it into tonight's talk because there's just too much else to go through, but it's always very valuable to, and maybe I'll even do that as a separate workshop. But when we understand that their behavior is coming from a specific need and feeling, it brings a whole different angle on it for us. And then, of course, the old style things of smacking and punishing, obviously that goes against the SLS. It goes against the iPods because of their sensitivity, and they generally resent you. And yes, they might temporarily stop their behavior for a moment, but it will show up because the need hasn't changed. It's going to show up elsewhere. So just a quick interesting question. Have you guys noticed that we often do what they're doing? If they raise their voices, have you noticed that you also start raising your voice?
He doesn't really do that yet. So.
Okay. Well, often they are, I always say our children are our mirrors. So because I have this philosophy that they're here to teach us, and they are these amazing upgrades of us, when they are acting out, just check internally. One of the first things you can do.
Oh, definitely.
Is
yes.
check.
I can really
what's going on inside me?
Yeah. As well.
Exactly. What is going on inside me? Or what have I been saying or doing differently? And that is somehow being mirrored here in my child's behavior. Okay, I'm going to mute you guys a little bit to go into the next slide quickly. And maybe this is a question slide. I can't remember. Okay, this is just a little quote. Oops, sorry. Trying to juggle between two different things here. The discipline is not about punishing your kids. When you're disciplining, you're actually teaching them what's expected. So if you put that lens on you, that every time you're disciplining, you're actually wanting to be showing them what you expect, then it puts a whole different perspective on your role as a parent. Discipline is actually guiding and teaching. So from that place, we're going to look at what are the qualities of positive parenting. So in the center, you can all see this parent-child relationship. I'm going to bring my little pen on here, the highlighter, the spot. Let me see if this will work, my mouse. Can you all see? No, sorry. I want to draw this here. The middle, oh goodness. Sorry, guys. The parent-child relationship is the most central thing, which I'm sure you guys already know, to the dynamic of positive parenting. And then if we go around the circle, we will see that it's a kind of parenting where you're guiding your child without forcing or punishing, where you're being really honest with them in a child appropriate way. So I believe this is an honesty of openness. You are open and admitting your feelings. You're not hiding your feelings and trying to, like in our day when I was raised, there was this whole parents must sort of keep the arguments behind closed doors. You're actually admitting, right now I'm cross with your father, or what you've done has made me feel this in this way. You are being open. There's the respect and care, which comes in a lot with choices, and even 2-year-olds can make choices. Even 1-year-olds can make choices. Choices help them to feel respected. And then at the bottom of this this visual, it's a kind of parenting that values their uniqueness, their capacity, as I've already said, and we want to be building our child's independence. And this involves a lot of giving them a sense of identity, that they are different to their brother or sister, that they have their own unique choices of what they want to dress, how they want to dress. There's so many areas where they can become more autonomous, but often we just take over and we do stuff for them. And then the final one that in red is that it's a strengths and solutions based parenting. So if people ask you what is positive parenting, it's not about saying positive words. It's about all these values, and central to it is the parent-child relationship. And I'm going to spend some time now looking at choices, and then why they're so important, and then jumping in, how do we put this positive parenting framework and all these qualities, how do we put that into action? Okay, before we jump into the discipline. So I've said choice and responsibility are very deeply linked. If you keep giving children choices, then they're learning that they, not parents, they have that ability to respond. So I break up the word responsibility into ability to respond. And we want our children, surely, to have the ability to respond in any situation. So before we go further, I just want to check what you guys think of that. Anybody want to comment?
I find it beautiful how you broke it up.
Elimor, you said you like the way the word's broken up.
Yeah, I really can connect with that, definitely.
So, Stacey, you've probably seen with your 7-year-old as well, when you give them choices, they actually feel quite empowered, and they feel, and that is showing them that they always have an ability to respond to life. And of course,
I always try and give choices all the time.
Absolutely. And so what I'm going to teach you tonight is, one of the ways that I like to give choices, even for 2-year-olds, is to try and work with 3 choices and the words you decide or you choose. When we give a child, especially an iPod, a little sensitive upgrade, when we give them 2 choices, either you eat all of this or you won't get dessert. Either you do this or that. These little iPods feel, that's a bit limiting. They want more choices. So the choices can still be to get something done, i.e. the teeth. Either they can get up and go and do their teeth on their own, or you can walk with them, or the old school, more difficult option. Or we're going to have to, we're gonna have to force you to the bathroom and do the teeth. You choose. So when you give 3 choices, it's one of my magical recipes, which I wasn't even going to cover tonight, but I had to throw that in while I was talking about choices. So let's move on to how do you put this positive parenting into action? So I already said in the middle, connection, the relationship is key. I have no doubt that the fact that you're online tonight, you already have that relationship. You already have this deep love and respect for your children. You're coming from a place of consciousness that you are wanting the best for them, and you're wanting to parent in the best way. So a couple of biggies that are much easier said than done, but let's start with the easiest one, I guess, is that light blue at the top. I'm going to go around, is being honest. So sometimes children ask us questions and we we feel a bit stuck. I'm saying, be honest. If you don't know an answer, tell them, I don't know. I'm going to look that up. Good question. A good question is a nice way to answer these kids. They come up with so many amazing questions, and we don't know the answer to all of them. So be honest. You can also be honest in terms of when they get to that sort of 3 to 5 year old age, and they start exploring their sexuality in terms of boy and girl, and they want to know things. Be honest. And yet that honesty can be appropriate to what they are asking. You don't have to give them a massive sex education lesson at 5. Just be honest to what they are wanting to hear, what they're asking, honest in bite sizes. The green one is that upgrade issue. Be willing to learn from them. I love, love, love it when parents actually say to children things like, what a great idea. Thank you. That's a new way of looking at it. Let them show you new ways. I do believe that these children that are on our planet at the moment are extremely conscious, and they have a lot to offer. So be willing to learn from them. Instead of always feeling that you've got to know it all or you've got to guide them, sometimes they're guiding us, right? I'm just going to put the mute on because I'm hearing a couple of noises again. And then we're going to go into putting yourself in their shoes. What that relates to is really the emotional side. Remember the safe, loved, and seen. For the child to feel seen or feel acknowledged emotionally, a great way to do that is to literally put yourself. You can't fit in their little shoes, but actually I even go down on my knees to get to the same height. And I look at the room from the height of the 2 or 3 or 4 year old. And suddenly, oh my goodness, these adults seem big and everything seems different and scary. So put yourself in their shoes. A way to practically do that is to ask yourself, if I was Johnny right now, how would I be feeling? Remember, guys, they're living in a feeling world. How would I be feeling? And then you go with that feeling. One of my other top tips is feelings first. Then in the mustard color is letting go. To put positive parenting into action, we have to do less for them and more just with words. Now, this one is quite tricky. And of course, when they're little, we're still doing a lot for them. But even when they're little, they want to take over. They want to put that spoon in their own mouth and grab the bottles. So let them show you they are capable. That helps them feel respected. It builds the self-esteem beautifully. It fosters your relationship. And rather say it in words. For instance, just remember, if you take the bottle, if you take the glass like that and do that, it's going to pour. So you can use your words instead of grabbing the glass out of their hands all the time. I mean, when I say glass, we're talking about a plastic thing or whatever, age appropriate. But a lot of times we are taking over. We are doing too much for them, and then they don't get a chance to test out and try out their world. Now, if we had more time, I would ask each of you to give me an example. But so maybe just think of an example where you have maybe taken over, and now you're like, oh, okay, I want to just step back that little bit more and see. And then they're going to ask you, but Mom, Dad, help me. And instead of just rushing in, you step back again and use your verbal. Oh, you're not sure how to do this. What do you think? What can you try? Do you think you should hold it like this or like that? So use your words to question them, to get them to self-reflect. Because even in the brain, when you get children to think, to critically reason, you are accessing this part of the brain that is still very much developing at a young age. And the more that we get them to think and problem solve, the better. And then, of course, letting them decide, that goes hand in hand with the purple one of offering choices. So when you give them a choice, they must face the consequence. If you say either this, this, or this, you choose, but then they choose the difficult option and you don't go through with it, it goes right back to that SLS. That safety, that routine, and that predictability has now been gone, the trust, because you've told them there's a consequence, but it's not happening. And then the offer choices, I've already mentioned this a bit. Those are those 3 choices that work so well, the either or, and you choose. And then coming up to the gray, the disciplining differently, well, that is where we're going to go into now. How do we discipline in a way that brings out the best and that doesn't squash these little iPods, these little upgrades of us? You know, in our days when we were disciplined and shouted at or whatever, we were a little bit more rugged. We didn't seem to have the same sensibilities as they did, and so we just handled it, and it was part of that norm of that society. Nowadays, with children being exposed to so much, and there's so much going on, and there's so much knowledge available to them, they are many of them are very sensitive. So before we jump into that discipline, I'm going to unmute you to just check if there's anybody who wants to ask or say something. Maybe just looking at this visual, which one is hardest for you? Can each of you find one that is hardest for you? We'll start with Kelly. Oopsie, Kelly's phone is, there we go. Kelly. Oh, I can't unmute you somehow. What about Michelle, Yanti? I'm still not hearing. I don't know why I'm not hearing you. Stacy, which of these is a little bit of a challenge for you sometimes?
Well, I give choices, and then I name 3 choices, and then I'm told no to all of them, which is then really hard.
Okay, and then they're testing you. They're testing, are you going to go through with what you're saying?
They just say no, so I say make a choice. No. So, and then I'll set a boundary saying, right, you have now 10 more minutes to play. And I'll say, now time's finished, it's now time to go to bed. And it's, no, we'll do what we want. And then, yeah, I'm always a bit stumped where to go from that one.
Okay.
So.
Wonderful. So it's a very, what I'm hearing then is that no, because they've somehow learned, and of course kids learn all sorts of things, but they've somehow learned that you don't.
That's from a 3-year-old.
Yeah, that you don't mean what you say. Are there times that you don't follow through?
I don't think so. He's just a very, very strong-willed child, extremely strong-willed.
Okay. So what I'm going to suggest for you is to work with the specific recipe where you make the 3 choices all in line with what needs to happen. It's the easy choice, the together choice, and the more difficult choice. And then say you choose. When he says no, you simply immediately go through, you repeat, and then you go through with the D. Say, because you're not choosing or because you're saying no, that means we're going to do the difficult choice. And either they will self-correct in that moment, or they will not self-correct because they want to test you. And then you have to go through with the D, the difficult one, where you have to put that firm boundary down, and they start screaming and crying, and then you reflect again. You name his feelings. Oh, you're so upset now. I gave you a choice. I told you twice. I offered you, and you didn't make a choice. So we went with the D, and now you're cross. So that it becomes his responsibility. Do you see? It's you simply following through with what the options were. But that's all in that whole other recipe that I haven't actually put in the notes for tonight. So Stacy, remind me in the week, and I can send you some stuff specifically on this. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So ways to build your connection. Anybody want to jump in with what are the top ways you feel to build your connection with your child?
To do something they love to do.
Doing something they love to do, absolutely. What else?
We do a lot of roughhousing. We do. We play the tickle game.
Nice. Mel, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Well, just spending one-on-one time together. Like,
Building that
if
connection.
I'm really focused on her, and instead of allowing my phone to distract me, if I set like just a little bit of time aside where it doesn't matter what's going on, I'm like, okay, I'm here, it's you and it's me, and we're going to build Lego, or we're going to make a blanket fort or whatever. She's a different kid.
Lovely.
But if I'm distracted, I'm busy and I'm on my laptop and I'm flying over this and that, then like we miss each other.
So you guys have got it. It is where you are genuinely involved in their world, even if it's for a limited 5 to 10 or 20-minute period. But in that time, you're totally immersed in their world. So there's lots and lots of research on how play benefits kids, and obviously playing with them, diving into their world. For however, and I like to call it the special time game. You can even, for little ones, put on a hat. And in that special time, you put your timer on, and they can see you on. You've got this hat on, so now it's them being the boss. It's them playing. It's you kind of following their lead, and then you let your timer go off. Only 5 more minutes for our special time game. And then when that timer goes off, you might even need to give them a 5-minute warning, a 3-minute, 2-minute, a 1-minute for some kids, because they really wanting that time. And then the bell goes, you take off the hat, and you're back to being mom or dad. So that's a lovely tip for playing, where you immerse yourself in their world and you let them lead. And you know that obviously that is like gold, which is why even 10 or 15 minutes, half an hour is a lovely but quite a big one. If you're doing that once a week only, but you put on your hat and it's your special time, that becomes like absolute gold for them. Okay, I'm going to move on to, because we've got, 5 to 9 already. We're going to move on to the next slide, which is all to do with these ways of disciplining differently. So, of course, how we're going to be doing it is maintaining the connection, even when you need to correct them. A lovely, what was she? I think she was an OT. I went to a conference once, and she spoke, Maud, somebody or other, she spoke of connection before correction, which I think is a lovely, lovely little acronym or way to remember. We want to maintain that connection at all costs. So exactly like I said, play with them, set aside time for a check-in, even if you can't do a playing every day. Maybe you do a little check-in at night. And then I think this is where a lot of us struggle. I'm just going to unmute you guys here. Being kind and firm. So these strong-willed children, they can often overrule us, but the kindness is where you are actually hearing them emotionally, going down to the eye level, for instance, saying, oh, I see you very angry. And then the firm is that boundary. The firm has to have a consequence and a follow-through. So, Stacey, that's an area you're going to be working with. I hear that your one is very, very stubborn, but you and I can look at that separately in the week, how for you to follow through, that they know you mean it and that's going to have results. And then obviously keeping calm, the way we say things with our body language, our tone of voice. For a lot of sensitive kids, moving in closer and speaking softer, amazingly, a softer voice has a lot more impact for a lot of kids than this loud way of disciplining. There are some children that when you shout, it goes straight into their amygdala in the brain, which gives them a flight, fight, freeze response, which is a whole other workshop. I don't know how many of you saw my Facebook Live on anxiety a couple of weeks ago, but I talk all about what happens in the brain and in the physiology when a child is anxious. Now, I'm finding a lot of little newbies, beautiful beings, little upgrades of us, are so sensitive that if we raise our voice, even to our partner or to our colleague on the phone, they are going into a bit of a stress response. So wow. Talk about being taught to regulate your own emotions by watching your child's reaction to even your body language. So we know it's about guiding instead of forcing. We don't need to manipulate them when we are working with these easy recipes where we're naming their feelings, giving them the expectation, and we're following through with the bottom lines. Consistency, I think for young kids, also one of the most important things. Explain what you're expecting for them and then maintain it. Explain, bedtime is for sleeping. Bedtime isn't for watching TV or whatever. Explain it and what is expected and what isn't, and then repeat and keep it there. Being fair, logical, and simple. So the back chatting and trying to get out of stuff, if it's logical and fair and simple, it doesn't need a lot of us over explain all the reasons around a certain discipline we're putting into place. We don't need to over explain it, but when we offer choices, which I've already explained, they get to decide the way in which something gets done, not whether they go to school or not whether they get dressed or not whether, but the way. So it's actually a way, by doing the either or, it's a way of them reacting to you, but still having some say in it. And then we encourage, disciplining differently encourages their capacity. So we want them to use their own power. And this is where we step back and we say to them, what do you think? Show me the way you want to do it. And then, of course, with this kind of discipline, we're always reassuring in our words and repeating. I can't stress the repetition enough, especially in the young kids, because their nervous system is being built. They are learning through the repetition. And of course, when we are disciplining with heart, we are really wanting to build our kids up instead of the sort of, we're exhausted by them, we feel that we're nagging all the time. We are rather building them up, and then they, because of their connection with us, that's where the cooperation comes in. Yes, they're strong-willed. Yes, they're going to push back. But when we are putting our boundaries down and giving the choices in a way that they know we mean it, it builds them up rather than breaks them down. Benefits of giving choices. I think I've covered this to some extent already. When we give a child a choice, we're immediately communicating that respect. And it empowers them to actually participate in a decision so that they become more cooperative. And then I mentioned the responsibility already. The lovely thing I love with choices is it actually gives them a lot of independence, because now they've got to try out, with this option, this is the consequence. With this option, that's going to happen. With this option, that's going to happen. And it is much more of a guiding the moment you bring in a choice. But guys, remember, try and make it a 3-part choice where all 3 options are leading to the end result. Okay? And then, of course, it brings in this whole strength of relationship. So I want to give you guys a little question. I want you to think of a time when you were given a choice and how that affected your behavior. It could be an adult time or a time when you were a child. All of you, think of a time that you were given a choice. And hopefully it was more than either or, but maybe it was just either or. And then anybody want to share
You've been giving a choice.
an example of when you were given a choice and how that affected you? Maybe even in your workplace. Let's think of a simple workplace choice.
Well, it's in any case, it gives you a feeling as if you are heard because you get a voice. So by asking for you to make a choice in something, then it involves you already in the situation and you can actually direct. So it gives you a sense of power in that sense. So feel of appreciation.
Absolutely. So you're remembering that you actually yourself do feel empowered when you're given a choice. Yeah?
Yes.
Now, what I worked with, and I think this is why my choices thing is, I just keep on and on in so many of my articles, in my book, in my webinars. I often talk about this choice thing. I did a lot of my formative years in child abuse work, and those children, an abused child basically doesn't have a choice, right? They are disempowered. And so they taught me very, very much that whenever I gave them a choice and I stood back and I said, what do you think? How do you want to do this? Whenever I gave them a choice, I noticed a big reaction, a big boost in their self-esteem. And from that point, I moved into this whole thing of the 3-choice recipe, the either or, and it being the easy choice, the together choice, and the difficult choice with the words you choose. To this day, adult or child, I still maintain and I still see when we are given a choice, we feel much more empowered. Think about it even in your relationships or your boss. If he gives you just a choice of either or, that's still quite limiting. But the moment there's a third choice, you're involved. You're involved in the process. So never underestimate that power of choices. Okay, then we're looking quickly at the words we use. I want you guys to think of the words you heard as a child, and which words do you remember that impacted you the most?
No.
Okay. So Mel, you heard lots of no's, and how did that affect your behavior and your feelings?
Well, much later down the line, now as a mom, like, it's something that I really have to be conscious about, so that I'm not always like no. And in terms of being an empowered person, it took me a while to find my voice, and that no isn't necessarily it. It's not necessarily the end of the road, or that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily black and white. That is what it is. It's not necessarily that. But it's taken a long time to get there, and to sometimes not take no for an answer, so to speak, you know. Yeah. No was a big word, and discipline.
Thank you. That's a beautiful, honest share. And I'm hearing that it did impact your life, and to some extent still does, because you have to watch yourself for not saying no.
Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Anybody else with another kind of word or set of words that have impacted them when they were young? Anybody else think of other words?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't per se other words, but I know for a fact that for me, if one of my parents made me a promise and didn't pull through with that is until today. Like, I'm my word is in that sense like sacred. So I always try to really pull through with what I say, because I know that affected me very much as a child.
Yeah. So I used to do this exercise. It's a bit hard to do online, but I want to just explain it to you. Where in a group, I do this exercise with a big piece of cardboard in the shape of an apple, and I get members of the group to come up to say any words that are harmful, that have ever been said to them as a child or an adult. You know, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, whatever. And every time they say those words, I write it on this big apple, and they pull off a piece. And we keep pulling off a piece of this apple, if you can imagine this cardboard apple, until we are literally just left with this core. And of course, that visual is very powerful, that in a level of self-esteem, our words can be literally like eating away this apple of self-esteem. And then what we do, which is almost more valuable to see, is we try and put that apple back together again with a couple of positive words. So all the members they write different stuff on there, and they press, with a press stick, we try and build this apple up again. But you can imagine it will never be the same as it was. So our words, sometimes these no's, these negative words, these promises, Elimor, in your case, these negative words can have, unfortunately, a greater impact sometimes than our positive words. It shouldn't be this way, but unfortunately in society, we are hearing much more, children are hearing much more negative than they are positive. So where that starts, and here's the invitation to you guys, is start to watch your words about yourself. I've been doing a few YouTube clips on this lately, a few of my Tuesday tips on Facebook. When you are critical about yourself, your children are hearing that and absorbing that. So the words that you're saying, it's not only about saying those words to them and making, trying to parent them in ways with kind words. It's also about being kind to yourselves in words. Okay, so words, I've just done one easy slide here. The other thing I wanted to say is that young children, the power of our words, especially for young children under the age of 6 are very impressionable, and our words are taken very literally. Have you noticed that? They don't have the same abstract reasoning that we do when we're older. So young children take everything that we're saying very literally. So even little sayings, two in the bush is worth, I don't even know those sayings, but even little sayings that we take for granted, a younger child won't understand. They will take it quite literally. So just to be aware of that, sometimes for young kids, we do need to explain our words. You kind of you see on their face, they're not quite getting it. You often need to explain what you're meaning. And there you can just see words of encouragement improve, obviously, a child's self-esteem. So that's when you're reassuring them. That is when you're noticing the efforts that they're doing and commenting on them. And guys, remember, you don't have to, what I call globally praise them. You don't have to go, ooh, this is so amazing, what a beautiful drawing every single day, because these iPods, these upgrades are very sensitive. If you keep saying every drawing is amazing, the word amazing loses its power. If you keep saying they're so wonderful and so great and so fantastic, it's not what we call, it's more global. It's global and generalized praise, whereas kids are really wanting specifics. They want to be noticed for the effort they're making, not necessarily how good you think the drawing is. So I like to go into a genuine noticing and commenting. So there's a whole lot we could say about words, but I'm going to leave it at that. It really helps when you genuinely and specifically notice something, even if they're just trying. You simply tell them, I can really see you trying. Last time you couldn't even put this lid on, or whatever it is. You just notice and comment on it. And that's very encouraging and really raises their self-esteem. And then obviously criticism, put downs, blames, comparisons are obviously lowering of the self-esteem, or words that are said harshly. So there's a certain chemical in the system that has been found that when we are saying things in a lot of anger, it releases a certain chemical, a stress hormone in the child's body. And of course, unfortunately, if that shutdown is big, then that chemical, that shutdown goes right into not being able to respond because they're now in a stress mode. So just because these upgrades are so sensitive, I did want to just mention that stress hormones can be released by the tone of our voice, and then we have to work backwards and go, sorry, I was speaking really loud, and give them that physical comfort sometimes that might be needed. Okay. Finally, before we go into questions and answers, I just want us to look at expectations. Guys, so many of us want to be perfect. There's no such thing. So I want you all to really, really acknowledge that even in psychology, there's just this term of good enough parenting. There is no perfect, because we are a work in progress. Okay? So when you expect yourself to be perfect, you are setting yourself up for a lot of self-judgment, criticism, and pretty much a recipe for disaster. So just notice your expectations of yourself, and sometimes we even have expectations of them that are a little bit unrealistic. The next thing in green is, what are the messages we're giving them? I have tried to say that throughout tonight's talk. The messages are to do with, what is our bottom line here? What are we trying to guide them with? What is the teachable moment here? And then also to consider is always our emotions. If we know we get angry and get triggered by certain things, rather literally put your hands up and say, hold on, I'm being triggered, and you can walk away. You can give yourself permission to go and be in the bathroom and breathe for a couple of minutes or seconds. You have full permission to feel your emotions fully, go through them, and then come back in a calmer space. If you know that certain things trigger you, you can use that as a teachable discussion for your kids and bring that in. And then timing with little ones, we don't want to wait too long before we move into discipline. And we always want to take that moment first to cool off. So it's better to cool off and then go into the disciplining. But it is not a good idea to leave it completely, and then this evening, something happened in the morning, and now in the evening you're trying to get to it. Because the young ones, they're very, very, very present. I think that's what I love most about the young new beings around, is they're so present, and they are forcing us to be present in the now. I love that saying, be where your feet are. So where are your feet? If you look down now, your feet are here in this room. That is what is present for you now. And then to consider, when you're speaking, are these words building them up, or are these words going against the relationship or in some way breaking them down? And then, of course, what will they learn? That's a lovely question to ask. What am I learning here, or what are they learning here? Because that discipline is, of course, about teaching. We're wanting them to learn stuff from us. And then I think I've mentioned this throughout tonight, using daily events, even things that we see as we're driving to work, things that show up in magazines or at the preschool or with our friends. Use examples as teachable moments. Let's say you see someone being kind to somebody else. Bring that up. Even the little ones, they can understand, and they can be involved in the concept of kindness. They can be involved in all sorts of concepts that we sometimes shy away from because we think they're too young to handle it. I mean, I have noticed so many little ones are so advanced in terms of what they are emotionally able to assimilate. They might not have the words for it, but if you look in their eyes, you can see they are really, really aware. They're really conscious. So, guys, I think we're pretty much there. I would like us to use this last bit of time for your questions. I have put up a little quote here, but of course it's going back to the same thing about children having a voice. Anybody have a question or a comment or something that they're wanting help with right now? Everybody's silent, but I've unmuted you. The only person who's not unmuted is Kelly for some reason. Kelly, I don't know, something on your phone has made that I cannot unmute you. So if you can unmute yourself, please do so. Mel, are you still packing?
No, that's why I've finally for the last little while actually been front and center and accounted for. Um, I'm just listening. I've really enjoyed tonight. Thank you. And it has reaffirmed some of the things that we practice and then added onto them. We've been doing the choice thing, but not 3 choices. And I think she will respond very well to that. She's Libran, so choices are difficult. It's I mean, you get a toddler and then you get a Libran toddler, and you know, a lot of patience is involved. But I really like the 3 choices thing. That's clever.
Yes, and do let me know. I would love to hear from you guys. Maybe I should ask before I say this. I'm assuming you all want access to tonight's recording and these notes. Yeah?
Yes, please.
Please.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this recording and put it up on YouTube as a private link. So only you guys that have been here will get access to the whole to be able to, it won't be public. In other words, if other people try and go and look for this, they won't find it. But I will send you guys the link. And then if you want to, I can send you the notes, separately. And what I'd also love is to hear back from you guys. How have the 3 choices been working? Maybe you've got other questions. Like Stacey, it seems like you and I have got a few things we can also get more specific with. And in that, if any of you are willing to just write a sentence or 2 as to how you found tonight. Online is my sort of new forum, so I have to be honest, it's quite, quite a new medium for me. So I'd love to hear how it worked for you. If you'd be interested in any other online trainings, that would be wonderful if I did get some feedback from you guys via email or SMS. Is there anybody else with a question or comment?
What if you can't come up? I mean, I sometimes really struggle with coming up with choices. It's like you just can't think of any.
Yes, in that moment, in that moment, it can be hard. I like to. It's a good question, Stacey. I like to try and think of what is logical here. Kind of going with something that's logical. And that's why the acronym that I use for discipline choices is ETD, which is not estimated time of departure, but easy choice, together choice, and difficult choice. So the easy one is the option that doesn't involve any challenge. They just get up and go and do X. The T is where you are somehow involved together. In other words, you'll start the homework for them. You'll walk with them to the loo or whatever. And the D is the more one that they're not going to really like, the difficult choice. However, I need to just say, please, please, please make sure if you give them a D that you are prepared to follow through with it. I remember in Joburg days with a client, and we were working with this choices thing, and she just suddenly shouted out to a child who was about to climb out of a car window instead of through the door. She said, if you do that, I won't give you any chocolate. I'm never going to buy you chocolate again. And of course, he knew that that's like a no-brainer. Of course, he's going to get chocolate. And we had to work. I had to work a lot with her with actually going through with a difficult choice, because they are going to test you, especially today's strong-willed kids, the little upgrades. They want you to be firm in yourself. They want you to present with this confidence. But to get you to do that, they're going to have to push. So,
okay, but then, okay. I
Yeah.
know that is for me. It's a very that is the very difficult thing, because I'm in that sense. Like Jonathan is really a mama's boy, and my husband is very much more firm one.
Mm.
But he as well comes, I can say, still from a very traditional Afrikaans family, like a completely opposite upbringing as that I had.
yes.
And he had like disciplining, like very still like
Strict.
from his side, very physical and very vocal, which I never had. So I have also an extremely respectful relationship with my parents themselves, and that's also something that I want to continue in bringing to Jonathan's upbringing. But I do find it extremely difficult to put in that sense the boundaries, like to what would you say then? What is a D? What is disciplining in a way that is still respectful for them, but that you do put a boundary down?
Well, give me an example, and
If you
I'll
understand the question.
try and figure out a D for you. Give me an example.
Like, he is, for instance, right now very much in the no phase. He does, like, everything that you ask him, it's no, and then he just runs away. And like,
Okay, so what are you trying to get him to do?
You
Give
try
me-
to ask, and exactly, you don't need to get into repetition with asking, because that's
Well, okay, and what is he saying no
like,
to?
for instance, all kind of things right now. Do you want to wear this? No. Do you want to go to bed? No. Come here? No. Go
Okay.
there? No.
Okay. So that no phase is quite common, and they go through that age. What I'm going to suggest with that is change. That's not really an example where we can bring in the ETD, because you're asking him a closed question in the first case. Do you want to go to bed? No.
Yeah.
That he can only say yes or no to that. Okay.
Yeah.
So an open-ended question is something where he has to give you more than a yes or no. In other words, what is the time for now, Jonathan? He has to say bed or TV or whatever. You see, he can't say no there. What is the time for now? So the what, who, the what, the who, the why, the how. I don't really like the why. The where and the when are all open-ended questions. So when they go into that no phase, start to train yourself into asking open-ended questions. Does that help?
I will definitely try that.
What
I
time
know
is
for a
it?
fact that
You said,
right
Jonathan,
now,
what time is it now? And then remember, you've done the preparing in words. So you would have already told him after whatever, it's going to be bath time. And then you might remind him, okay, it's bath time now. No. Right? He's saying no. Then you go back to, what time is it? Because that is something his brain has heard. Bath time.
yes.
And then you say, what is bath time for? He has to answer. Instead of a no.
I'm excited to try it out.
I don't know, Elimor,
Yes.
you got my book the other day, didn't you? Did you buy my book?
Yes. So
Okay. It's going to make a lot more sense if you're going straight to, I think it's chapter 7. It's going to make a lot more
Chapter
sense
7.
there. Sorry, is it 7 or 8? Yes, go into chapter 7 and then jump back to chapter 10, where it's all, the recipes are all following on from each other, one after the other. Okay.
It's definitely, it's going to be a project now.
Guys, I want to.
But I mean, for instance, tonight,
yeah.
like it was 6:30 tonight, and I said, right, guys, what's the time? What's the time for? And it was supposed to be bath, and they went scootering, and I was like, no, let's try again. And they went, we're going scooting. They rushed off out the door. It's like, no, we're not scooting now. It's not time. So we're doing it, and you're not going to stop us.
So when did you tell them about bathing? Or you just expecting them to remember that every night at 6:30 is bath time? Or did you at 5 o'clock and at 2 o'clock remind them that 6:30 is bath time?
Yeah, I remind them every night, but it just...
But when do you remind them?
it's a bit of a losing battle.
When do you remind them, and how many?
I do say to them right now, we're going to have dinner, and after dinner, remember, guys, you can then have a bit of play, and after play, we then have our bath. But yeah, I mean, I thought it's 7. I didn't really have to keep reminding.
Yeah, unfortunately you do.
I see that. Maybe I'm just not doing it enough.
You just got to keep repeating. And eventually
Okay.
they're going to get so tired of you repeating that they're going to go, we got it, Mom. It's bath time. Okay. And then, of course, but for
That'd
you,
be nice.
Stacey, we're going to have to work also with a consequence, because they have
Yeah.
somehow learned that no matter what, they're going to just do what they want, because for some reason they don't think that there is going to be a consequence that is not nice. But yeah, well done. You are preparing. Most of you guys, I'm hearing that you're doing so much right, which is amazing. You're all on the right track. You're seeing them as your teachers. So my techniques are fine-tuning this. And what I wanted to say and end with is that many, many people, they just say to me, it makes a world of a difference when they're using these recipes. However, in the beginning, it is a little bit like learning a new language. Okay, so you're gonna sort of get the words wrong. How do I do this again? And it does take practice. It's not an overnight instant, okay, I'm just going to ABC, although I even do in chapter 10, I talk about the ABCD, speaking Kiddic, finding the feeling, naming the feeling, then helping them get the feeling out if needs be, and then going to disciplining differently. So tonight I've given you a big, broad overview of a lot of concepts, and the SLS, being safe, being loved, being seen. And I'm hoping that it's enough for you to already start trying these ways. And then obviously, if you're wanting more specific help, then please do email me, and I can do my best to give you some email support. Also, if you want to get my Parent Magic book, but I know a lot of people with young kiddies, it's not easy to have time to read. I do also have a e-version on Amazon. And what I am going to be doing, because people, online work is so much more viable, is I'm going to be setting up a series of different parenting courses. So in other words, tonight would almost be just like the intro, and then we'll go into much more detailed examples and things, some of which will be in this kind of format where we can see and hear each other, and others will be just me being recorded and then a little bit of text with questions, different formats. So if you are interested in being involved in any of that, then just do let me know. Thanks, guys. I see our time is already coming to past. Is there anybody with a last comment or question?
I think let me specify. I think my previous question a bit more. Like, what would you find a good way of disciplining, as in not really punishing, but
a consequence,
as in.
So
is it only like action consequence matter, or?
No, there are logical consequences that definitely do work, and depending on the age, things that work quite well can be time out, where they need to spend 1 minute per year for their life. So if they're only 3 minutes, but time out can be very valuable consequence. Taking away something that they really want for a certain amount of time is, I know nowadays with devices, that really works well as a consequence. So we try and make that consequence quite logical and fair. And sometimes as they get older, you can even ask them, what do they think the consequence should be? But the more logical and purposeful the consequence is, the more they're going to be learning from it. I hope that helps, Elimor. Definitely a timeout is a viable one. I actually like to use the term time in, because they're actually taking time to go inward. It's not necessarily such a bad thing to give them a bit of time to self-regulate. A lot of young children, they're very much in their emotional part of their brain, which is the limbic system, and it's not so easy to regulate their feelings, and giving them a space to go into their own room and actually just tune in with themselves and have a little bit of time inward is sometimes very, very helpful. Obviously, there's breathing techniques and other things that can help calm them. So I hope that answered your question in a short way, because we've come to the end of our time. Thank you, everybody. Please do send me a little email, just a one-liner of how you found tonight. It will really, really be helpful for me. And then we'll keep in touch with what I'm offering next, and also specific questions if you have some. Have a beautiful evening, guys. You're all amazing.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks so much.
Have a nice evening. Bye.